Welcome to First in Fiction, your first stop for learning to write better fiction. I'm your host, Aaron Gansky.
And I'm Alton Gansky from Central California, and the one who hung all this stuff up. My computer did not want to play well with me.
You'll be happy to know, Pops, I sold out the Mac. I blamed all our technical difficulties on the Macintosh. So
Yeah, I normally don't have a problem like that, but for some reason I had to reboot. And
Molly
we're
pointed
learning.
out that Molly pointed out that it is normally the PCs that have the problem for us. So thanks for pointing that out, Molly. We appreciate that. So.
Well, I normally go through and I turn everything off, and then I reboot everything, and I bring it back up, and then I couldn't get stuff through my headset. In fact, I'm wearing a different headset to get things to work. So there it is. My apologies to everyone, and appreciate Molly defending the honor of Apple products and Mac.
Yeah. So one of our goals, I think, for goal settings for writers is going to be to eliminate technical difficulties when listening to podcasts about writing. That sounds like a first good goal.
Yeah, that'd be a good one. I keep track of a lot of podcasts, and there's always something from everyone who does it. Sooner or later, will have a problem. So here we are. It's good to see you, Aaron. Brand new year, 2015, as we get underway with this great program you started, the First in Fiction.
Thank you. Yeah, it's good to be back. Had a couple weeks off. I did not put up new content because hashtag holidays. That happens. So my my family was sick through the entire Christmas break. We always had somebody down, so I was kind of running around trying to keep people healthy and pick up antibiotics and all that kind of stuff. So I didn't get the repost done like I'd hoped. But we're back and got a brand new year here. And with the new year, we thought we might try a few new things. These were ideas that you pitched, Pops, and I really liked them. So what you wanna let our listeners in on it?
Well, one thing we thought we would do for the new year, since we're talking primarily to new writers, is overcoming the jargon hurdle, and the way we're going to do that is to do something called Publishing Terms You Should Know. I wanted to call it Publishing Terms You Ought to Know, Should Ought to Know, but are how to speak the lingo. Just like anything, there's almost a secret sauce, a secret language that's used. Doctors have theirs, and when I was a fireman, you learn very quickly some terms that you had to have at the drop of a hat in case you need an emergency. You didn't have to scratch your head and say, "What did the chief ask for?" The same thing in publishing. There's just a lot of terms that are used that until somebody tells you what they are, they make no sense. And the one for this episode is something called over the transom. You don't hear it much anymore. In fact, a lot of people don't even know what a transom is. So let me tell you. You want to know, don't you?
I do. You pitched the idea to me. You said over the transom, and I'm like, that's great. I would love to know what that means. I've never heard it.
Well, a transom is a piece of wood. It's a separator that goes over the top of a door usually. It can mean other things too, but in this context, that's what it means. And in old office buildings, like in New York, they didn't have air conditioning, and so the way you got cross breeze was to put windows over the doors leading into the office. So the office on the east side would open a window, and they'd open their transom, a transom window, which is right above their door. And the people on the opposite side of the hall would do the same thing, and you'd get air cooling back and forth. That's how you cooled the building before there was air conditioning. Well, what people used to do is they would go to these office buildings that had publishers in them, and they would go in after the office was closed, and those transoms were usually left open, and they would push their manuscripts over the top. And it's called submitting over the transom. In other words, it's unsolicited. You don't have an agreement. No one's agreed to read it, but you still think if they'll look at it, they'll buy it, and it's called submitting over the transom. And so when you hear it, what the person is talking about is people who are pitching ideas, putting in proposals, trying to get someone to read a manuscript that they've not approached ahead of time. They don't have permission to do that. They just do it. And that's called over the transom. And I've known a few agents who have gotten them under the bathroom door at conferences and stuff where people will shove them under the stall door. So some people are desperate. Yeah, you don't want to do that. Over the transom.
There's so many things you can say about people who slide it under the bathroom door, which might be if you're a little low on toilet paper, it might be a relief for the person on the other side of the door there, but I don't think that's exactly what you want your manuscript used for.
Yeah, I know an agent that did that. The person shoved the manuscript
Oh,
into the door. He ripped a page out and he said, "How did you know?" And he shoved the rest of the manuscript back out. So
wow.
cool
Wow.
under pressure, I suppose.
Yeah,
So that's
so
your publishing term for this week is over the transom, submitting without having received permission to submit.
okay, so in context, you got a couple publishers talking to each other. Oh, I got this manuscript, but it's, over the transom. The other publisher, I get it. Why read that? Is that kind of
Yeah,
the
right.
same?
Or they used to say a particular publisher receives 10 submissions over the transom every week.
Okay.
These days it'd probably be a lot more, but that's what they're talking about is it's people they're not working with, but the writer wants to work for that publisher, whatever it might be. So it's an article, book, whatever. But you put it in the office when no one's there.
Okay. Excellent. So if you've heard of an expression, a publishing expression, you've heard it used perhaps at a writers' conference, you're not sure exactly what it is, go ahead and submit that to me. You can do it either through Twitter. You see my Twitter handle beneath my name there, or you can do it via Facebook. You friend me on Facebook, and we'll try and include those. We'll try and compile a list, and we'll try and hit one each week. And I like that idea, just doing a little bit of the lingo each week, and not always publishing terms. Sometimes we can do writing terms as well, but I think publishing terms are really where people are going to want to be kind of familiarize themselves with that, especially if they're going to be submitting over the next year. That's going to be, I think, a good goal for them to learn that language as well.
Yeah, you want to sound professional, and also you want to understand what other people are talking about. So I think it'll be helpful, and it's kind of fun.
Agreed. Agreed. So today we're talking about goal setting for writers, and it is a new year, and we always have New Year's resolutions, and usually we can keep them all the way through January, sometimes through February if we're lucky. But that seems to be the I guess the pattern of behavior for most Americans, and writers are no different. We like to set goals for ourselves, and then we quickly forget about them, or we don't follow through. And so we thought we might do a quick show on how to set some goals as a writer. What are some good goals? How do you set them? Some reasonable goals, and how do you make sure that you actually accomplish them? How do you make sure that they don't disappear sometime after Valentine's Day? So what kinds of things do you think we should be looking at, Pops, what to do as writers? What kind of goals should we be setting, and how do you think we should attain those goals?
Yeah, I've been giving this really a lot of thought. I've changed over my career how I set goals, but that's just part of aging, I suppose. You change in life. First, we need to understand what a goal is, and a goal, by definition, is the object of a person's ambition. What is it you want to do? Where do you want to go? What do you want to achieve? It's the object of effort. So it's a desire, and then when you think about it in a professional term, how do I get to that point? How do I meet this goal, whatever it is? So, if you want to make $10,000 a month, and who doesn't? How much do you have to make every day? How much product do you have to sell? Whatever. You can break things down a little bit. The first thing I would say is that people need to know themselves, especially this time of year. We get the guilt heaped upon us. Have you set your resolutions? Have you set goals? And we'll talk about what we normally hear at those times. But not everyone sets goals the same way. Just like there are intuitive writers that don't outline, and just like there are outliners who do go through great effort to outline. I think it's the same way with goal setting. Some people are more intuitive about it. Others have got to write it down in a book and review it every day, or at least every week, to stay on target. You have to find out what works for you. And my advice on that is you start with the most restrictive, that is, write everything down. If it's not working for you, you're making lots of changes, maybe you need to take a different approach, but you really have to find out how it is your brain is wired. Even when it comes to goal setting, find out what keeps you motivated and moving towards something. You need to have some overall goal.
Yeah, I agree with that. I like the idea of writing it down, and even as a intuitive writer, I do understand the value of outlining. But I think regardless of what kind of person you are, you do need to be aware of who you are. But I think there is a lot of power in writing something down, even if it's just at the beginning of the year. You say by the end of the year I want to accomplish A, B, and C. Go ahead and list them out. And I think that you want to go back and check them sometimes to see how you're making your progress. Sure. There's something about writing it down that makes it a little more permanent. And again, maybe this is just me. If I don't write it down, it typically doesn't get it done. And so I'm always finding ways to leave myself reminders on my phone, etc. So and now in the digital age, how easy is that to create some sort of document and then set up a reminder on your phone that's going to go off once a month that says, hey, double check those goals, how are you doing, to kind of keep bringing you back to that, mm-hmm. to keep you going, to keep it at the forefront of your mind so that you're not distracted and overwhelmed by everything else that's coming at you in life. I think it's good to have some sort of document that you can come back to.
Yeah, and it helps to break things down into steps. We're used to, when we walk, we take one step after another. It's the only real way to do that. And when you do that with goals, it helps you get there. I have somewhere an old set of cassette tapes. I never thought we'd reach the age when we would think cassette tapes were old. But I have an old set of cassette tapes that helped people develop perseverance and goal setting and those kinds of things. And the example they use is a person who wants to be a neurosurgeon. I mean, how difficult is that going to be? That's right. Probably the highest in medicine. So they picked something that was just extremely difficult, and they began breaking it down until it became just bite-sized goals. What am I going to take in college? What do I want my GPA to be? Where do I want to go to med school? How do I go through these different steps? And planned each step and then just checked them off as they went. So there's something to that. There's a great power in writing things down, as long as you're willing to change them when situation changes, mm-hmm. Writing things down and then checking them. So I do usually a to-do list for every day. If I don't do that, I'm all over the map.
Yeah, it's so easy to get distracted, isn't it? There's so many other things. Even today, I use my email inbox as a to-do list. And so if something's in my email inbox, I understand I have work that I need to do. And so very difficult for me to rest until I've got that cleaned up. And of course, I'll deal with one email, and by the time I'm done with that, 6 more have come in. And so it's really easy to get distracted by all these other things that are coming in. Being able to come back to a single document that will help you refocus and reevaluate where your goals are, because like you say, they may change throughout the year. If your goal is to be published in the New Yorker and for whatever reason they close their doors in July, you're probably not going to be published there if you haven't already been published there. So there's a goal that needs to be modified in some way.
Mm-hmm. And if you do get a contract, nothing is more motivating than a contract. You're going to have to break the work down into a series of steps. Well, it's the same thing with goal setting. Let's talk about the 3 types of goals. This is how I see it anyway. But mm-hmm. there are 3 types of goals. There's ultimate goals, immediate goals, and what I call step goals. The ultimate goal is the long-term thing. This is where you're really headed, maybe over a career or your business or whatever it may be. So sometimes we say, well, I want to get married, I want to have kids, this is what I want to do. Business-wise, here's my big picture. And we do the same thing as writers. What is my ultimate goal? For some, they simply want to make a little extra money writing because they like it, and so maybe they want to do articles or something, but make a little money. Others, they want to make their living as a writer. Well, those are very different kinds of goals. The ultimate goal is the big picture. Where do you see yourself in a certain number of years? And that becomes your overarching ultimate goal. But then a level below that is what I call the immediate goals, the things you have to do right now to get to the ultimate goal. And so those are the things you do right away to help you reach your destination. So an ultimate goal would be, I want to make a living as a writer or as a novelist. An immediate goal might be, I will start and finish a novel this year. You have to get a novel done before you can be a novelist, so I will start and finish a novel this year, or I'll finish my second novel, whatever it might be, or I'll finish a novel in 2 years, depending what your life situation is. And then the step goals are increments of that. How do you do that? How do you write a novel this year? how many pages do you think your novel's going to be, and how many pages does that mean you have to write a day, or how many words to be able to make that happen? What is it you need to learn? Those kinds of things. So it keeps breaking down. So ultimate goals, immediate goals, and then these step goals.
I like that. I like the step goals because goals need to be measurable, right? You need to be able to see that you're making progress toward it, and that's what those step goals can really do. If your goal is to make a living as a writer, ultimately, that may or may not happen in 1 year. But if that's your primary goal, your ultimate goal, and you've got these other steps that you can work toward, you can put checks in boxes. And I think there is a real power in putting a check in a box. It helps to motivate you. It helps to keep you going. It helps to see that you've actually accomplished something. It's real easy to get discouraged, especially as writers. We tend to get discouraged. And so I would also add this to celebrate. When you achieve a goal, go ahead and celebrate. When you accomplish 3 or 4 of your step goals, take yourself out to dinner, buy yourself a soft serve from McDonald's or something fancy, like maybe go down to A&P and get a corn dog. But something that's you kind of reward yourself that you've worked towards something, you've accomplished something, and it helps to remind yourself that you are getting work done and you're getting one step closer, one step closer, one step closer. There's a lot of power in that.
Yeah, it reinforces your commitment, and nothing leads to more success than previous success. So if you're having the good luck at doing these things in smaller increments, then the bigger picture becomes more believable, becomes possible. I know when I sit down to write, and I'm going to write book-length work, whether it's fiction or nonfiction, I have to be careful with myself, because if I start thinking about how many words that is, so for a novel, for example, I'm going to write 100,000 words. 100,000 words. Average word length is 5 characters. That's 500,000 words, and that's not counting the space bar. So you start thinking in those terms, it's just too much. So I don't think about that. I think about either writing a single scene, or a certain number of words per day, a certain number of pages per day, or even just a page a day. If you write 1 page a day every day, you've got a book in a year. Mm-hmm. So you can do it in small increments. And that's where I think having reachable goals will get you to the ultimate goal. That's why the step goals lead to the immediate and then lead to the ultimate goals.
Absolutely. Those attainable goals, right? We want to set goals for ourselves that we can actually attain. I think of NaNoWriMo, which I think is, the writer in me says it's awesome. I'm glad that it's really gotten a lot of people to start putting words on pages, and it's really motivated them to keep moving. I often have students, since I teach creative writing, they'll ask me, "Oh, are you doing NaNoWriMo?" And I'm always tempted to say, I live NaNoWriMo. I don't wait for November. Like, why? No, I don't wait. I don't do it in November. But I also, what is it, 50,000 words you're supposed to do in 1 month? I cringe a little bit when I hear how much you're supposed to be doing. I can't do that much. I have a family. I've got a job. There's right. So many other things going. There's not enough hours in the day. And I also know if I try, I'm going to be a miserable person to be around. Like, my wife will call me to task. She will say, "Put the computer away and go to bed so you're not grumpy." But
she will beat you down.
She's got a brown belt in karate. I don't tell her no ever. So my wife, I love her, but I don't mess with her. Yeah, funny story. I'm tangent here. She is legitimately in karate. She is a brown belt, and a buddy of mine named Brian saw her sparring, and he's also in karate. He told me, he goes, "I never want to spar her. I don't care if I'm a higher belt or anything. I never want to spar her. She scares me."
You can say "yes, honey" in 5 different languages.
Absolutely. I got my bases covered, but that's some good motivation. If I'm not writing, I just tell her to tell me to write, and then all of a sudden I'm motivated. So.
Well, see, and even in that, there's goal setting. That's what the belt system is for, is to get you to move through those levels, and that requires that you set a goal to get the next belt and that sort of thing. And it can also, goal setting can help you in an individual project. I once had to write a novel in 6 weeks, And I did it, and it came out okay. I wouldn't want to do another 6 weeks like it because it was
Right.
just constant writing to get it done. But it's just the way things worked out. It wasn't my plan. Wasn't my fault for a change.
Hmm.
Unlike having a computer that didn't want to work for me today. Um,
Right.
excuse me for that. Well, so we have those then. So you have a step goal that leads to the immediate goal, leads to an ultimate goal. But you mentioned a couple times about being measurable. There's a thing called the SMARTER goals, and that's an acrostic, SMARTER. And these are usually defined, well, they're often defined differently, but let me give those to you. They're all basically the same. So you spell out SMARTER. The S stands for specific, and that's what you were
Hmm.
talking about. When I meet this goal, what is it I have to do? What's the number? What's the time? What's the cost? Whatever it is, what is the specific thing? So the goal might be I'm going to write 300, 600 words a day, depending how much spare time you have as you're getting underway. But I'm going to write a certain number of words a day. I've had times where I've had to write 2,000 to 3,000 words a day. Yeah, but knowing that was what got me through it. So be specific in what you want. So you don't want to be just a writer.
Hmm.
Do you want to be a journalist? Do you want to be a novelist? Do you want to, if you're going to be a novelist, what do you want to be? You want to be a science fiction writer, fantasy writer, romance writer, western writer, supernatural, suspense, horror? You have to be specific in what it is that you want. And then what you've mentioned several times is the measurable. Can you chart your course? Can you say, well, I set a goal of 1,000 words a month, and I only got 800. Maybe the goal's too high. I need to back it off to 800, and so I can do that without killing myself. But you won't know that until you measure it. So that's the SM, and the A in SMARTER is achievable. Don't set unrealistic goals.
Like
Like I'm gonna,
NaNoWriMo?
yeah, I'm gonna write a book and become a multi-bajillionaire. And yeah, maybe you might, but there's a good chance you won't with that. It needs to be achievable. A lot of us, and I'm one of those people, set goals we can't reach. You want it to be a bit of a stretch, but it does have to be achievable. You've got to be able to pull it off.
That's an important distinction to make between achievable, attainable, if you will, and a goal that's also going to stretch you. Goals, I think the reason we have goals is to stretch us a little bit, to help us stay focused and keep on course. So you can easily set a goal to write one word a day. That's a noble goal. Might be, undershooting things a little bit. You might want to step that up. My personal goal is to write 1,000 words a day. And sometimes I hit it, sometimes I don't. There are days where I'm writing. I am writing and things are going well, and I'll hit 2,500 words, sometimes 3,000 words. I've had some crazy good days, and I understand that there are going to be days where I'm going to get 50 words if I'm lucky.
Right.
And so if I hit if I hit 3,000 words one day and then I take like 2 days where I only get 50 words, I'm still on target. But I know that because it's specific and it's measurable and it's also attainable. It's not completely out of reach, but you want to find that sweet spot, something that's going to stretch you a little bit, but something that's not going to completely break your will when you don't accomplish it.
Yeah, failure really brings us down if we fail to meet a goal. So do make them achievable, and that really goes with the next one. It's got to be realistic. You do no one any good if you set a goal that you can't reach. It isn't unattainable, and it just isn't realistic. So in your situation, 1,000 words a day is good. 100 work days, you got a novel. So that's roughly 5 months. But being realistic, what I do is I say there's 21 and a half work days a month. All right, so I'm going to write this many words a day times 21.5, and over the months I will average this much per month. But I also know that there's going to be days where I just don't want to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Or I'm sick and just ill or have a headache or something, and so I lose the day or something comes up. Has been happening a lot. So it does need to be, we need to be realistic. I'm going to write every day, every work day of the month, but realistically I'm probably going to miss a couple.
Mm-hmm.
It's just going to happen. So once you set it that way, you feel a whole lot better. And that really is the next one, the time frame. You should most of these goals should have some time frame. I'm going to write this many words per day over the next 3 months and check that, or every month I'm going to check and see where I am and reevaluate and then move on. And then the last two, let me just give those to you quickly and then see what you think of that. So you have a time frame and then you evaluate. Sometimes we think if we set a goal as a writer, we can't go back and change it. It's chipped in stone, and so you can't erase it, and that's nonsense. You have to evaluate it. When we sent astronauts to the moon, they did not fly straight there. They made all kinds of course corrections to be able to hit the spot. It's the same thing in your writing and your goal setting. You're going to have to make mid-course corrections. So you evaluate what you've done. No, my goal was too high. My goal is too low. I'm doing better than I thought. I need to step it up a little bit. And the last one is after you evaluate, then you revise based on what you've seen. So that's smarter. It's specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, done in a time frame, evaluated, and reviewed.
You know, in education,
revised, not reviewed, revised. I'm sorry.
In education, they talk about SMART goals. That's one of the big buzzwords, because I don't think education ever met an acronym they didn't like, and so they're
like
all
the
about
military.
acronyms. Yeah, I told them I was going to start an educational group called ANA, which stands for Absolutely No Acronyms. Pretty good turnout in my first meeting. So, but yeah, we do the SMART goals. I haven't heard smarter. I haven't heard the addition of the evaluated and revised, but I really do like that, because one of the things is, like we talked about, being flexible with yourself, right? I mean, your goal is to write 1,000 words a day, and then you're out playing football with your buddies, and you break both your wrists. Not that that's happened to anybody that I know. Not me, so that's the good news. You know, you're not writing for a while, unless you've got a pencil that you're using in your mouth to just kind of hunt and peck, or you're dictating to somebody. That's going to complicate things. So the revision aspect and the reevaluating is important. So those are good things, and it's kind of an overview of how to set a good goal. I want to, if we can, just for a couple minutes, talk about some good goals that writers can set. We've thrown around quite a, just as examples, finishing a novel or writing a novel, starting a novel and completing it. I think what we need to also say is that you may not write the novel and completely revise it and do 2 or 3 drafts of it in a single year. That's a tall order. But I think something like writing a novel is a good goal. I think setting a specific daily goal or monthly goal, rather, for the number of words on page, I think is also very noble. And one other that I would add before you add some, Pops, is submissions. If you're writing short fiction, or if you have a novel that's already completed, you should be submitting. You should be researching some markets that take stories like you've written. You should be researching publishing houses that are looking for manuscripts like you've written. I think some of your goals might be simply that: research publishing houses, research digital literary magazines, whatever it is that you're writing, poetry, finding poetry magazines that publish the type of stuff that you write. Research, I think, is an important goal. And then also make a goal to send out a certain amount of submissions, either monthly or over the course of the year, because that process is super, super valuable. And that's one of the step goals, I think, from moving from writing as a hobby, which is fine and awesome and noble. But if one of your goals is to eventually make money at it, nobody's going to buy something if you don't submit it. So one of the things I was thinking about is encouraging writers to actually submit their work and go through that process, collect their rejection slips, because everybody gets them. And as you go through that process, you learn a lot about the publishing industry. You learn a lot about what publishers like to see, how to format your manuscript, how to write a cover letter. Those types of things are all very noble and good, but they don't come just from writing novels. You do have to do a little bit of research on those.
Right, and other very reasonable goals and necessary goals is to first identify your weakness. Grammar not your strong suit. I just did a post over on the Blue Ridge site That's Blue Ridge Mountain Christian Writers Conference, so it's just the initials brmcwc.com, about what writers ought to be reading. I gave them a couple of places to get some help with grammar, and this is all on the internet. Places where they can hear from agents, places that they podcasts like this one that they can watch, and that becomes a goal. Especially if you're just starting out, the first goal is self-education. What do I need to know, and then how do I go about learning that? Attending a writers' conference somewhere in the country, and sitting in a classroom where a professional is teaching, an agent, an editor, a writer, published author that's teaching. Like you're going to be teaching down in Orange County in a few months. You're going to be down there, and then in May you're going to be out in North Carolina with me. It's a great place to learn, and the best writers, never stop learning. They ask a lot of questions, so they get better and better. So find out where your weakness is. Once you identify that, then you go about fixing it. And who can help me? Where can I get the information? Once you have that done, then what's the next step that I need to take? And I agree, submitting is part of it. Sure, you're going to get rejections. It's just the way it works. Even the best actors don't get every job.
Right.
Same thing with the writers.
Yeah, you got to apply. You got to go to the interview. You got to go to the audition, if you will. If you're an actor looking for a role, you've got to audition. You're not going to get every role, but you still have to audition. If you don't audition, you don't get the gig, and if you don't submit, you never get published. So some other ones that I'd throw in there, I think you've touched on them. I like that idea of never stop learning. Attending a writers' conference is a great way to do that. It's a great way to continue your education, but it's also a great way to network. So networking is big. The two that I would add in the context of learning specifically is to read, maybe one craft book a month. Maybe one every 2 or 3 months, maybe one a quarter. Maybe you can get through 4 in a year, even 2 or 3 in a year. But at some point, I really suggest if you're going to be a writer and you really want to get better, read a book about it. We've done a cast in the past about the top 10 books every writer should own, and reading some of those is very beneficial and can really help your cause. I'd also suggest getting an editor. Having something of yours edited. If you've never been through that process, that's a process that's very, very valuable to go through and work with a professional editor. It doesn't have to be an entire novel. That might be a little bit pricey, but if you've got like a 5 or 10 page short story, they sometimes work on those. And going through that process of seeing your work edited can sometimes be painful, but it's always educational. And again, it's one of those things that's going to make you a better writer.
Yeah, that brings up a little story, a little anecdote. You had Jack Kavanaugh who filled in for me when I was traveling some time back. Excellent writer. Well, we started off together, and we would read each other's stuff. And I mean, that was early stuff, so it was painful on both sides with that. Well, I published an article, and I was really excited about it, and then I took it to him, and he praised me and said how wonderful it was that I got that, and then he edited it. And when he was done, I thought, man, I wish they hadn't published that. I wish I had known this before I sent it in. And that's when I learned that I had some things I needed to. I needed some more arrows in my quiver when it came to putting words together. He had the same kind of experience. So I think what you're suggesting is very good. Pay a professional editor, make sure they know what they're talking about, to do just a certain number of pages. 10 or 15 pages or something. See what it is that they're catching that you're not. I have a new book coming out next week. The ebook comes out on the 13th, and on the 20th, the print book comes out. And I'm going through it again, and I'm seeing what the editor had done to it, and they really made it a lot better. I've done 40 books, and 2 of them are good. But anyway, I've done a bunch of books, but I'm indebted to the line editors and the copy editors. They see things I just can't see, but I learn each time.
I've actually just completed the first round of edits on my Hand of Adonai series, and I've worked with editors before. I've got a couple of very trusted alpha readers that are very, very good, have very keen eyes. And I've mentioned before that even with The Bargain, when that was published, there's still mistakes in there. My wife likes to point out to me. And since she has the brown belt, I never tell her not to tell me about those. But sometimes she'll point them out, and I think that before this book is published, her eyes are gonna go through this book. I'm gonna find a way for her to look through it. But my point in this is going through this process with a different editor has been very enlightening. And not only was she catching several of the mistakes that I made that will save me quite a bit of embarrassment. I learned a lot about the process of writing. I even learned a lot about the genre of fantasy, and she'd asked me questions that I'd never considered before. That made me think, I don't know how I feel about that. She'd say, we can do it this way, which is going to indicate this particular thing, or if we did it this way, it's going to suggest something else. What did you want for your story world? And I thought, man, that's an interesting question for an editor to have the keen insight to say, not just to say, do it this way, but to say, there are multiple ways to do it, and you can take whichever avenue you prefer. We just have to make sure we're consistent with it. And that process was very enlightening. Very enlightening indeed. I really enjoyed the process of editing, and even though it's never cool seeing all your mistakes, but at least I'm excited that they're not there anymore. We got most of them, I would say, good 90% of them. I think we got cleaned up and learned a lot in the process. So definitely a good thing to do.
There's always mistakes in first editions. There are over 100 mistakes, as I've said, in Fitzgerald's book. And that actually helps sell the book. There's a story behind that too, but it's how people who collect old books, first editions, that's how they recognize first editions. They know where the mistakes are. Mm-hmm. So it's not uncommon. You have 100,000 words and you're 99% accurate. You got 1,000 mistakes, and so you see how easy it is to do that. Tim Martin asks a great question. How would you recommend finding an editor for this?
I've got some. I actually just responded to Tim. It's funny, but that is a great question. How do you find an editor? There are several ways. I can always make my personal suggestions. Bethany Kazmarek is the one I just worked with. She did a fantastic job. Really, really good job. I'm very proud of the work that she did.
From the last episode. So
from the last episode. Yeah.
Look at the previous episode and see her.
Yeah, we did a whole episode on how to work with an editor and things to look for, etc. So I would definitely recommend her. But I think one of the best ways, if you're looking for a variety, you can always do some Google searches. I think word of mouth is probably the best way, because you have friends and you trust them. You've got writer friends and you trust them. And so I think that's probably the best way. You can always find some at writers' conferences. The advantage there is you get to sit down and talk with them a lot of times to get a sense of how they work and what they look for specifically.
Yeah, I would be careful about pulling them out of magazines, like how to write magazines. And if you do something like that, you can ask them for some of their clients' names and see if they're any good, because anybody can claim to be an editor. And then once you pay them, there's not much you can do about that. One place is writers' conferences. Now, you don't necessarily have to go to the writers' conference. You go to the writers' conference website, you look at the faculty members, you find out who does editing in those, and since they're on faculty, it's a pretty good bet that they have been vetted some way or another. So at our conference, for example, we have Alicia Morales comes to mind. She's doing a lot of editing and works with Lighthouse. Mm-hmm. And she's really found a niche there. The co-director used to edit, Edie Melson. She doesn't do that anymore. She's too busy with other stuff. But you can find them that way. But do be careful. You can, again, Google, go online, but see if you can get some solid recommendations on it. Because, and then let me back up. And then I would also check with editors and predators to see if somebody's called them on for being dishonest, but there are some good ones out there.
Alicia Morales is is another really quality editor. She's done a lot of really great work. She's worked on a lot of award-winning manuscripts, and so she really knows her stuff. I used to do some editing, and I've mentioned before on this podcast I don't anymore for several different reasons. After going through this latest round of editing with Bethany, I think it's good I'm no longer an editor, because I was like, wow, I missed all of that. That's wow, and I used to charge people to look over their manuscripts. So,
yeah. Let me speak to that. There's a big difference in editing someone else and editing yourself. They're different parts of the brain. And writers like you, it's going to be very difficult to separate your creative mind from your analytical mind, because you're working on your own stuff. You're trying to make it better. I send you my stuff, and you can go through it and mark it all up with red, and I'll wonder why I miss so much of it. So I find it very easy to edit other people's stuff. I have a horrible time editing mine, and that's why I need editors.
Yeah, absolutely. We tend to be blind to our own mistakes. Our minds will fill in the blanks
Right.
When they're there, because we know what we wanted to say. But having that unbiased pair of eyes is super, super beneficial. So,
Right.
yeah. Any other noble goals for writers that you can think of before we sign off here?
Yeah, a couple of things. One is to learn to be flexible. I spent 10 years in architecture, and one of the first things you learn in architecture is rigid things break, flexible things stand. And so what I mean by that is when they build a high-rise building, for example, it is designed to sway. If you've ever been on an upper floor, when it starts swaying, it's really disconcerting. But if it didn't do that, the building would crumble. And so buildings stand because they have some flexibility to them, and we have to do the same kind of thing. If we are too rigid, we will break. If we're flexible, we can adjust and endure the changes and the challenges that come our way. So learn to be flexible. And then I think the last thing on my list is this: know what you can control and what you can't. So every once in a while I come across somebody who says, I'm going to write a novel and I'm going to make a boatload of money. And as I said earlier, well, maybe, maybe not, but you can't control that. I know writers who've written for a couple of decades that have trouble now placing a book. They can't control the economy or the changes in publishing. They have to adapt. And so, again, back to the flexibility, but also know what it is you can't control. You cannot control if a publisher bails out on you. You can't control the economy. Crashed in 2008. It affected publishing horribly. Most common sight on a New York street was an editor with a box of goodies from his desk because they were being fired left and right. It was just horrible time in publishing. Well, no one could control that, and it's the same thing in writing. Some things are going to change for you. Right. You only worry about the things you can control.
Right. Yeah, very good. I mean, worry about what you can. You can't control what you'll make on a book, and I think it's okay to go into writing for money, but if that's the only reason you're writing, you may want to consider other professions where it's a lot easier. I mean, I think most of us are writing not because of the money. The dream is to be able to support ourselves with our writing because that's what we love to do. But at the same rate, if I knew that I would never make another dime on my writing, I would still write. So you've got to have that passion. I did want to make mention before we do close up shop here. Several people asking if that were unable to make it, asking if we rebroadcast. And the good news is we do. We're on YouTube, so you can find us at your convenience. It doesn't have to be Wednesday night. I know it's late for a lot of you East Coast personnel over there, but you can always find us on YouTube. Best way to do that, you can either go to YouTube and search for Firsts in Fiction, or you can search for my name, Aaron Gansky. It's on my channel. We've got all the, at least the last few months worth of, since we went to video, those are all up there, and you can always download the videos or the audio and all of that good stuff. So iTunes and Stitcher, you can find us there as well. So we do rebroadcast, of course, on my website. You can always find every webcast that we do, and on your site too. Now, is that correct, Pops?
Yeah, yep. I'm putting them up there now. I put up a new page within my website where we can see the First in Fiction, and again, my writer's talk is also there. And all of those can also be seen at YouTube. But we always appreciate it when you come by the website and take a look-see. And then, as you say, the audio versions are available through iTunes, Stitcher, and for Writers Talk, also Podbean. Yeah. So you can always download to your smartphone or some other device if you want to just listen to it without the video. So yeah, it's available, and a lot of as you say, a lot of the back ones, previous episodes are recorded, and you can view them as often as you want.
Yeah. And then real quick on just the last little bit of some personal news, I wanted to say thank you to those of you who have supported my sister Crystal and donated to her GoFundMe account as she was coming up on her second brain surgery. Everything seemed to go well. Took her a little bit longer to recover than she hoped, but it looks like everything's fixed up pretty well for now. So we're definitely hopeful, and that went as smooth as brain surgery can ever go. So for those of you who supported either financially or through prayer, she sends her thanks, we send our thanks, and I just don't remember if we'd given an update on her or not.
Yeah, I'm not sure if we had or not. I saw her last night. Yesterday was her day to go down for her post-op checkup, and so and what people may not realize is it's a 5-hour drive to get to that particular hospital.
Right.
So she and her husband drove down. My wife took care of the kiddos, and I happened to be over there taking food to the grandkids, taking them a little McDonald's, and when they showed up, so they happened to get home a little earlier than I thought, and she was doing great. She was doing great. So
good to hear.
Yeah. Glad to have that behind us.
Absolutely. I got to see her a little bit over Christmas. We shot up to Fresno and said hi and got to spend some time and have some dinner together. So it was good to see her out and about. And the recovery process is still long, but she's well on her way to recovery and to some sense of normalcy. And that's I think one of the things that she was most looking forward to is normalcy. She hasn't had that in a while.
But when she gets older and they start comparing scars as old people do, she's going to win.
Oh, it's hardly noticeable. Hardly noticeable.
Yes. It's maybe 6-8 inches long, back of her head. Yeah. So then, last thing is this: next week, come join us because our topic is making writer prompts work for you. It's one of Aaron's topics, and he's going to lead us through that, making writer prompts work for you. So we certainly want to see you next week, same time.
Same bat time, same bat channel, and on that note, I am curious. I'd love if you are a writer and you use prompts, or you've heard some good prompts. Leave them on my Facebook, or tweet them to me, or leave me a comment on my website. I'll try and collect those before our broadcast next week, and maybe talk through some of those. I'll try and bring some of my favorite ones. It'll be a lot of fun. It'll be a lot of fun. So we're hoping to see you back here next week. And until then, thank you all for listening, and good writing.